we're going to move into our next speaker, who is Isaac Morán from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. And he's going to share some novel data that looks at the role of supplementary motor area in auditory categorization. Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you. Well, this talk is neural correlate of auditory categorization in supplementary motor area. And well, we know that the brain builds internal representation of sounds. These internal representations are important to categorize the sounds and then make appropriate behaviors. This process is important for humans and for other animals. However, the neural mechanisms associated with auditory categorization are less understood. Well, for this reason, I question how does the brain decide which action to perform based on sounds? For this reason, we create an auditory categorization task in which we train monkeys to arbitrarily distinguish between target and no target stimuli. And well, the monkeys learn the target stimulus because they are rewarded. We use naturalistic stimuli with complex spectrotemporal patterns, and the types of sounds that we use were monkey vocalization, animal vocalization, artificial sounds, and Spanish words. During the task, the monkey was sitting in front of the screen and a speaker and a lever. And the trial began when a gray signal appeared in the screen, indicated that the monkey need to press the lever. After this, a sequence of auditory stimulus occur, and the monkey task to receive reward is hold the lever during the no target stimuli and release the lever after a target stimuli. And it's important to note that we incorporate a delay after the stimuli, and green go visual cue. We do this because we wanted to disentangle the auditory and the movement signals. That's right. There are three types of trials, depending on how many sounds occur in the trial, with 1, 2, or 3 sounds. And it's important to know that the target sounds always appear on the last on the trial. Then when the monkey learned the task, we record extracellular activity in supplementary motor cortex, and we choose this area because it's related with integration of sensory information, decision-making, and premotor activity. This is the percentage of correct responses in the categorization of target and no target stimuli. And we can see that the recognition is very well, is higher than 80%. And well, in general, the neural activity in Emcee called the categorical stimuli. And this is an example of a neuron. It's a raster plot, and the firing rate in black lines, and is grouped by the number of stimuli. We can see that this neuron increase its firing rate when the target stimulus appear, decrease its activity during the delay, and then increase again during the period in which the monkey need to release the lever, moving his hand. In contrast, during the no target appearance, the activity of this neuron is changed only a little bit. If we see the same neuron, but this time aligned to the sound start, we can see that the same profile, but this time depending on which sound is presented. This is all the sound in target and no target categories, and we see that this signal increase with target and is modulated only a little bit in no target sounds. The black line below indicates the moment when this neuron categorize significantly the difference between target and no target sounds. The blue line and the red line indicates the moment when this neuron recognize the individual identity of each sound inner the category. And we can see that this neuron categorize very well, but well, don't recognize the individual identity of each sound. But it's interesting, no? And there are 3 other examples of neurons, and we can see that the categorization profile is very common in this area. Here, we summarize the population responses in the percentage of neurons that code the category or the identity of no target and target sounds. And we can see that many neurons code the categories of the sounds. Then we also investigate the categorical dynamic of neural activity in the population level. For this, we use principal component analysis as a method for dimensional reduction. In this plot, I show the first principal component, and we can see that the activity of this component indicates the moment when the monkey releases the lever, and this makes sense because it's a premotor area. The second component is very interesting because it predicts the appearance of each sound, but its activity increases a lot if the sound is a target sound. Maintain this activity during the delay and decrease when the monkey is going to move his hand. And the third PC indicates the moment of the start of the trial. Well, then we made the mixed PCA, that is a similar method like PCA, to know how is the categorical coding in the population activity. And here is the first DPCE that represents the categorical profile of the population activity. We can see that this categorical profile start at the middle of the sound, is maintained during the delay, and reach a maximum peak when the monkey releases the lever. This is the second and the third DPC, and we can see again the categorical profile, but this time in a transient way because the signal change their sign in the movement period or in the delay. Well, sorry, and this is important that the 3 PC together sums 60% of the explained variance of the total activity, neural activity. Then we wanted to know if the auditory and movement processes are dependent or independent one of each other. We use a method developed by El Sayed that calculates the principal component in each period in an orthogonal way. And here I show the variance explained by the first auditory component. This component, sorry, explain 50% of the variance during the auditory period, and then during the delay explain a little bit more variance, but in the movement period it doesn't explain much of the variance. In contrast, the movement component can explain about 60% of the variance of the population during the movement period, but not a lot in the auditory period. And the result means that the auditory and movement computation are independent or close to orthogonal each other. And well, if we plot the neural trajectory of the auditory dimension versus the motion dimension, we can see that during the sounds appearing in dots, the neural trajectory moves along the auditory subspace. If the target is presented, the trajectory goes to the right in opposite direction of the no target trajectory. And this is very, very interesting because it's like two attractors. And then only on the target appearance, this trajectory travels around the movements of the space to the top, because is when the target appear, the monkey need to release the lever, need to make a movement of his hand. And well, in summary, we found in this premotor cortex that at that single neuron and population level, there is a categorical coding. And we found a transition from auditory to movement dimension that is very interesting. And well, thank you for your time. This is the preprint, and this is my email if you want to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Feel free to also share your papers in the chat for all the attendees, so they can have a link if you, in case
Yes.
they can't click on it for the, if you have a link to your papers or your contact information, Twitter, anything, feel free to share it. Are there any questions from the audience? Great, thank you. There's a question from Mildred Salgado. Are there any results with the control task? How are the neurons modulated during this condition?
Yes, well, we have a passive condition where the monkey only perceives the sound but doesn't do any behavior. And in this case, the neural activity is flat, isn't modulated, is not modulated. And well, this is, I have a sorry. Yes. In this case, in this passive condition, it's a flat activity. It indicates that the monkey needs to do something to categorize the stimuli to change their activity in this area. Mm-hmm. And is this. Sorry.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
As I was watching this, I was wondering, what do you think would happen to the auditory categorization if you deactivated SMA? Like, how would that impact it? Or like, what's the result on the auditory like categorization?
Sorry, can you?
So because you were showing these fascinating results in SMA, right? That they track categorization. If you were to deactivate it somehow, the SMA, what would be the effect on the auditory neurons?
Wow, this is very interesting. Well, I think that it is a good experiment, because if we deactivate this area and the monkey can't do the task, maybe it's an important area, but we don't have this experiment, but I think it's very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We have one more question from Joseph. Can auditory cues be trained to a specific effector over time with reward? Example, a high tone for the right arm.
Yes,
low tone, like high tone for right arm, low tone for left arm. Can you do?
It is also a good question. I think there is a paper from Shaker. I don't know if you know this researcher. And well, they train monkeys to do something, different movements depending of the sound. And they found that in premotor areas, there are many neurons that modulate this activity depending of the motor plan. Well, I think it's interesting.
Wow. All right. I think we have a moment or two if anyone has additional questions.